Paige, what happens in the space between your inhale and your exhale?
Most people don't even know it exists
Because they rush through it?
because not breathing threatens our capacity to live, and the body clings to life.
So the pause isn't just a gap in the breathing then?
It's a direct experience of stillness, and learning to stay there changes everything.
This is Kumbhaka. I've practiced yoga consistently for over 10 years now, and I know that the most important part of building consistency is community. Other people to hold you accountable. And second to that is a solid practice plan to help you experience the true benefits of the practice. And this is exactly why I created the OmSom App. It's a free study tool to help you learn the Sanskrit and the philosophy of yoga. Plus, it's the home to our online community, which we call Sadhana Sangha. Every single month, the team and I offer 5 practices, and I guide you through an Asana workshop as well as a subtle technique, and we translate a few lines of the Yoga Sūtra together. It's honestly been my dream to create this app since I started teaching, because this is what I truly needed when I started practicing. So check it out in the show notes, or just search OmSom in the App Store. That's OmSom. Now, back to the episode. Namaste. Welcome to the OmSom Yoga and Ayurveda podcast. My name is Paige. I'm a yoga teacher and a yoga therapist.
My name is Paige. I am a yoga teacher and Ayurvedic health consultant.
You dropped the last name this week. You're just Paige now.
I know, it just came out.
I like it.
Paige Taylor.
Yeah, we don't need last names on this show. It makes sense. All right, so we are talking today about Kumbhaka, which is it can be a controversial topic. Maybe we want to put a disclaimer that this is not medical advice, and anything discussed on this podcast you should be using at your own discretion. We like to ponder things here.
We do like to ponder things.
But if you are someone who's interested in pranayama, then maybe this is something you've heard about before. Kumbhaka.
Yeah.
So we're going to explore what that means, and it's something that's become very, very popular, in the last 5-10 years.
Yeah.
With so many people coming to breath work,
Yes.
it always leads us at some point towards learning to hold the breath.
Yeah.
Right? And so that is what we call Kumbhaka.
Interesting. Okay.
And so we want to start to unpack that today. We want to start to explore where that takes us. And I think that's really what I want to kind of just stamp in before we get on with it. Is that this month we are starting our exploration of the space element.
Yes, it's true.
And that, according to the text, according to the tradition, and in the personal experience of many, many people all over, this practice of holding the breath takes you somewhere. It reveals something which is very, very subtle.
I also think just like on that as well, it's an advanced practice. Like we're in the 5th month of the year now, which means we've worked through earth, water, fire, air. Now we're in space, and only now we're talking about Kumbhaka. Only now we're talking about breath retentions. That there has to be this foundational knowledge and understanding of your own practice and your own capacity for breath that hopefully we've explored in the last few months before you start to work with Kumbhaka.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, it is one of those things. I think for a lot of people, we just need to start with learning how to breathe efficiently.
I think so many people that have dysregulated breath patterns are holding their breath.
Well, yeah, there's something to be said about that. Like it's a very core meditation teaching in the tradition that we study a lot under.
Yeah.
And that is that holding the breath means overthinking. When you see someone holding their breath, it's that they are thinking too much.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that we learn in meditation is how to breathe effortlessly, breathe naturally, breathe into the belly, the diaphragmatic breathing.
Yeah.
We do Makarasana, we lay down on our bellies, we lift our chest off the floor a little bit, and we learn how to breathe in an effortless way into the belly.
Yeah, and if you've practiced with Aaron and I, you know we're big emphasizers on the breath. We just teach breath all day, every day.
But if you practice with us a lot, you might find that once we get to the end of a practice where we enter into the pranayama portion, there might be a moment or a few moments or a cycle of breath that requires you to, or asks you to, and invites you to hold.
Yes.
To experience
intentionally.
that pause.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to discuss today.
Yeah.
That pausing between the breaths, that intentional pause and sometimes unintentional pause behind the breath.
Beautiful.
But what comes first on the podcast?
A
Paige?
story. Story time.
Maybe we should get a story time song.
Yeah, we need it. Selena, come at it with some sound effects.
Yeah.
Story time.
Okay. We want a story time soundtrack. So, in Hatha Yoga, we have these kind of like, you know how when you look at a Hatha Yoga text, you're often looking at like a textbook.
Mm.
And so a lot of Hatha Yoga has these oral traditions with them.
Mhm.
That there's kind of like these stories that kind
Yep.
of just circulate around the yoga practitioners. And so there is one of these stories. And the student comes to the teacher and he says, I want to learn pranayama.
Mhm.
But instead of teaching him how to breathe, he takes him on a journey.
Okay.
Where does he take him? He takes him to visit the local pottery.
Okay.
Now, he watches the potter and the teacher doesn't say anything. He literally just walks the student, like to teach him pranayama. He just silently walks him over to the potter and they have to watch this potter make a pot.
Okay.
So you can imagine the potter making the pot, right? He's got the wheel, he's got his block of clay, he's turning the pot, he's hollowing it out.
Mm-hmm.
And then once he's formed the pot, he takes it aside, he takes it off the thing, puts it out to dry. The student says, is it finished? And the teacher just looks and he says, no. Because first it needs to be fired
Mm-hmm.
and then it needs to be glazed.
Mm-hmm.
And that without that firing and glazing, what's going to happen? You pour the water in, it's going to leak through the pores.
Yeah.
Right? Because the form is there, but it's porous and nothing is contained. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So they wait
Mm-hmm.
and they watch this pot fired and then they can pour the water in and it holds.
Mm-hmm.
So teacher says, your body is the pot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Your breath or your prana is what fills it.
Mm.
And you've spent all these years shaping the vessel. Every time you practice asana, every time you practice your inhale, exhale, but without its seal, without the kumbhaka, everything you pour in leaks out. Prana enters, the prana leaves, but nothing actually sustains.
Okay.
And so the student then says, well, how do I seal my pot? He says, you learn to pause. You learn to pause the breath, and they call this Kumbhaka.
I like this. I think this is, like a nice fresh perspective for me, because I think that we have this same idea, but with bandha. You know, Jalandhar bandha.
Well, the bandhas help us to gather up the Kumbhaka.
Exactly. And they're so intrinsically connected to the different kumbhakas of the breath as well, the different retentions of the breath. But yeah, I think it is interesting to consider this on the breath perspective as well, that there needs to be that retaining of the breath. Something I've been teaching actually a little bit with pranadharana is like that when I breathe in, we draw the prana in, gather it at the center of the forehead, and then I'm quite articulate on the exhale, the prana is retained, but the breath leaves the body. That like the prana is, because there's all these techniques in pranadharana where we're getting the prana in and you're watching it move in and out,
That.
but then there's this discernment when we start to gather it. It's like the prana is now gathering, it is staying, it is retaining. That's literally the word I'm using. And then the breath is what's leaving. It's the same thing.
That's exactly it. Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then this word kumbhaka, do you know what it means? It means a pot.
Okay. Makes sense with the story.
So that's the idea behind the story, is that it's your body's pot.
Yeah.
And that's what it means. So you can think of it like your pressure cooker that you cook your food in, or the pot that you cook your soup in. That it's like you are using this kumbhaka to create this retention of the prana or of the breath that allows it to cook. Yeah. And what happens when you cook your food? You release the nutrients from your food. You release the nourishment from your food. We could have a whole conversation about like the science of breath, that it's actually that pausing and the rising of the CO2 levels in the body that causes the body's cells to open up and absorb the prana or the oxygen.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? So it's this temporary suspension of the breath that creates this pot that serves to soak that energy into the body.
That sounds nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's two types, right? They call it Sahita Kumbhaka and Kevala Kumbhaka.
Okay.
Well, it's like you're voluntarily holding the breath.
Yeah.
And you're choosing to pause, and you're doing the bandhas, and you're closing everything off. And then there's the suspension of the breath that happens involuntarily.
Yes.
And sometimes you have those experiences.
Yeah. And Patanjali
remember
speaks
when I
a lot
last
about
inhaled or exhaled.
it.
The inhale and the exhale have become so slow and drawn out
Yes.
that I can't tell which one is happening.
And so subtle.
At this point. It's become so subtle. And so you're not even necessarily like breathe, 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 pause, but you've slowed down your breath so much that it almost exceeds the need to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's such an interesting turning point in meditation, because there's so much control and so much shaping of the breath, and then you have to let it go. You have to just let it go and let the breath become effortless and seamless, and then naturally, those little moments of suspension, kumbhaka, happen without intention, spontaneous.
If you're listening on YouTube or on Spotify, leave a comment and let us know, when you approach pranayama, do you intend to hold the breath, or have you ever had an experience where the breath has become suspended naturally without you realizing?
Yeah. And I think that's where you mark dropping into meditation.
Yeah.
Because then as soon as you come out, or as soon as you realize, oh shit, I need to breathe, or I haven't breathed in a while, or something like that, then you're out of it, right? Like you're back in that prior state.
And that's pranayama as an experience.
Yeah.
It's pranayama as the result of the practice instead of the practice itself. It's the prana expanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So therefore your capacity for breath is less.
Yeah. So we are saying that sometimes we'll see people who hold their breath because their mind is so busy.
Yeah.
But if you then start to practice that, doing that on purpose, it has the opposite effect.
Interesting.
I hold the breath, and because I'm choosing to hold the breath, then it's presence. It's concentrating presence and awareness in that point. And there is a real depth in the concentration that you have around just the idea, like if I say inhale and hold your breath now, do it. All the way in and then hold. If you're driving, don't do this. And no matter what we say, like you can open your eyes and you can look around, but you'll be aware that you're holding your breath the whole time. No matter what things I'll say, you're never going to get distracted by what I'm saying. Even if I start telling you about what I did yesterday and what I had for lunch yesterday, what presence is there is the fact that you're not breathing.
Because we love to cling to life, and because the breath not breathing threatens our capacity for life.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It forces you to be deep in presence.
Yeah, and it is so interesting, because I think, like, I'm somebody that has naturally held my breath a lot in my life, and who knows how long I hold it for, really. But like when I first met breath retentions, I couldn't hold it for a long period of time at all. Like there's that fear that starts to surface with breath retentions.
That's it. I think for a lot of people that fear starts to surface, and it's that fear that only exists because we don't acknowledge it.
Meaning?
It's always under the surface.
Right.
You just haven't taken the time to stop and listen to it.
So you don't think it is fear of not breathing?
No, I think it's just a general fear that lives in your nervous system.
Yeah.
A general fear that lives in the subconscious part of your mind.
Yeah.
Where it's always sitting there, and that's the stress talking to you. The anxiety talking to you is like, something bad's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen. So then when you make that pause, then that comes to the surface of just like this fear that's been sitting underneath the surface.
See, I told you something bad's going to happen. You're just going to hold your breath and we're going to go kaput.
Yeah. And like the worst thing that could possibly happen is maybe you faint and you wake up a minute later because your body's automatically started breathing again. Yeah,
but I guess people don't know that. People just think you could hold your breath to death.
Yeah.
Do you think you could do that?
I don't think so.
I fully thought you would be able to do that.
No.
Yeah.
We have a reflex. It's even like if you go underwater, there's called a mammalian dive reflex. You haven't heard of this?
No.
So if you go underwater and you lose consciousness, you won't breathe in.
Really?
To your lungs, the water.
Wow.
But if you get taken up to the surface, the minute the oxygen touches your
Really?
face, your body will
Breathe.
open up
Oh,
and start breathing again.
interesting.
And so when you're unconscious, your nervous system has a baked in quality, which is to take a breath in when there's oxygen touching the face.
Right. Well, I
So
mean, I
no,
feel like
I
that
think
takes the fear out of it. Like if you take one piece of wisdom from this, you can just hold your breath, and what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to faint and then you'll breathe again.
Yoga Mythbusters. Did you really think
Yeah,
that was the
well,
truth?
sure. I was just
Wow.
like, maybe I would just hold my breath and die one day.
That's interesting. I never thought that ever. That thought has never crossed my mind. The years I've been teaching pranayama, I never thought that's
I feel
what
like
people
that
actually think.
would be maybe a common thought.
Yeah, that you like, but maybe it's an assumption. A common assumption is you can hold your breath to death, but it's not. No, it's not true. We can debunk that.
Okay, debunked.
Yeah.
Now we know.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've made some progress here today.
Let's call it a day.
That's a hell of a takeaway. All right, so
it might just be me. You never know.
No, I've had this conversation with a few people around the fear of breath holds.
Yes.
Now, the other thing is that we're not trying to do this forcefully.
Yeah.
And I think this is maybe another common misperception is that you should hold your breath until your face goes red and your veins are bulging and you're like,
yeah.
We don't want to be doing that either. We want ahimsa.
Yeah.
We want to move into that space from a place of calm, and then we want to come out of it in a place of calm.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain tolerance.
Agreed.
And it's called our CO2 tolerance.
Okay.
It's actually another kind of scientific phenomenon in the body, which is that over time, and it's like your coffee tolerance or your whatever substance tolerance.
Yeah.
There's a titration period.
Like spicy foods.
Spicy foods. So if we're going to use coffee as the example, if I gave you a shot of espresso tomorrow, you'd probably get a bit of a buzz.
Yeah, for sure.
You get a bit of a kick.
You could give me a decaf and I would have a buzz.
Exactly. But if I gave you a single shot of espresso every day for the next month and you drank the same, then you would get to the end of the month and you'd be like, oh, I feel fine.
Yeah.
And then I would give you a double shot for a month.
Yeah.
And then by the end of that month, you'd be like, oh, I'm sweet on the double shot.
Yeah.
I'll have a second double shot.
Crazy.
And then you might be like one of those people out there who I know there's many of them that end up on 6 coffees a shot.
Yeah.
So it's like they go from a single shot to a double shot, from a double shot to 2 double shots, from 2 double shots to 3 double shots, which, well, it's only 3 small size coffees, but you've had 6 shots of coffee. That's a lot of caffeine.
6 shots of coffee.
So then you might be thinking, well, why am I not sleeping so well?
Yes.
Okay, so then we change out that substance, which is the caffeine from the coffee, with carbon dioxide, which is what you breathe out.
Okay.
Yeah? And so over time, you will build a tolerance, a comfort to having more higher levels of CO2 in the body. And that fear that you get, the feeling of I need to breathe, otherwise I'm going to die, is just the presence of CO2 in the body. Yeah?
And what you're saying is we can get used to that.
We can get used to that. And when we get used to that, we also get the added benefit of starting to overcome the fear, which is one of the obstacles of yoga.
Yes, it's true.
That primal fear. And so we start to gain control over what? We start to gain control over the primal parts of the brain and the primal parts of the nervous system, which do tend to take over unconsciously because that's what keeps us alive.
Yeah.
So we start to gain control over those primal urges in the body. We can then have better control over the mind, better control over our actions, better control of ourselves in the world so that we can act more in alignment with the path that's going to be the most nourishing for us or the most aligned to our ethics.
Yeah. Okay. I like it.
Because you think about the comfort zone that so many people play in. They live their life in a comfortable place, a familiar place. I have this job, I have this partner, I have this, and I don't deviate from that because that's fear. Right? It's like the ego cranks in. And so this holding of the breath, it gives us a way to direct attack the ego.
Yeah, I like this. Like it's very similar to what we speak about with bandhas as well, that you want to hold till you find an edge, till you find a little bit of discomfort where where that fear comes up, where you're just like, I can't hold this any longer. And, you know, we say just stay for one more moment after that and then come out in that relaxed way. Same with the breath retention is that, we find an edge of challenge, an edge of fear, an edge of growth, and we learn how to be calm. We learn how to meet that place with grace. Yeah. And that's how we move through life, you know. Then you take it off your mat. And in those moments of challenge, in those moments of discomfort when you're off your mat, how can you meet them with grace? Yeah.
So breathing is not about breathing more. It's about breathing less. Pranayama is about breathing less. Learning that practice as opposed to huffing and puffing and huffing and puffing.
And by breathing less, you mean slowing down the breath?
And holding. Eventually.
Yeah.
All right. So what do the texts have to say? I've pulled up a couple here.
Okay.
The first is what the Yoga Sutra has to say about pranayama. And it says pranayama has external, internal, and restrained movements observed by place, time, and number that becomes long and subtle. Dirgha sukshmaha. Deep or long and subtle breathing that involves suspension or stilling of the breath. Yeah. And the word that he uses for that is stamba, right? Suspension of that breath, of that vital prana is pranayama.
Yeah, right.
So it's like the classical foundation. And then he talks about this fourth type of pranayama, which he calls Kevala Kumbhaka, which is a state beyond deliberate practice where the breath becomes spontaneously still. This fourth type of pranayama transcends the domain of external and internal.
Really, it's the pathway to Samādhi.
Exactly.
It's the pathway to yoga.
It's the pathway into the depths of your meditation practice. Okay, then Hatha Yoga Pradīpikā says, when prana moves, the mind moves. When prana is still, mind becomes still.
Yes, this makes sense.
And so we could say in the same way, when the breath moves, the mind moves.
Yes.
And when the breath is still, then the mind becomes still.
Yes, and that's interesting because no matter what, when you're inhaling and you're exhaling, the breath is moving. Even if you're slowing it down, even if you're breathing really deep, there is that movement. But no matter how you hold the breath, even if it's 2 counts, 4 counts, 6 counts, 8 counts, there is no movement. There is only stillness. And what the mind focuses upon, it will embrace the qualities of. So if you want the mind to be still, focus on the stillness between the breaths.
Okay, so then it goes on to say, when that Sahita Kumbhaka is perfected, that's when the fourth type arises. So you have to start by practicing the retention of the breath until it arises on its own spontaneously.
Then it's spontaneous, Yeah.
And it says that the Kevala Kumbhaka brings about moksha, which is liberation or freedom from our suffering. And so I think what's really cool about this is that in none of these texts is it described as something that we should strive for or compete against. I think it's like, how long's your breath hold is a really common question.
Well, maybe not in the yoga world, maybe more in like the diving world.
I don't know.
You've heard it in the yoga world?
I've definitely had students who time their breath hold to see who has the longest breath hold.
Okay.
So, or just to be like pushing against that edge. Whereas it's kind of more described as a doorway in the texts. A doorway into stillness.
You know what? And I think what's coming up for me now as well, because breath retention is something I've really struggled with for a long time and something that I have been working with, as you know, over the last few months since I did a training recently. And they're very specific about the counts, like 8, like 6, 4, 6, 4. What's Savitri? 8, 4, 8, 4.
8, 4.
Yeah. And then even in Maha Mudra right now, it's like specific breath counts. But what I found was so interesting, what your advice was when I couldn't keep up, was just to count faster. Like it's not even about the the seconds. It's about the pacing as to which you're holding the breath in ratio to everything else. And it was like, instead of counting to 8, like 1, 2, 3, 4,
1, 2, 3,
5.
4,
It
5,
was
6,
just
7, 8.
like speed up the counts. I was like, this is just such a yogi hack. Like, it's just like, it doesn't even freaking matter what the count is. Like, the counts
Because
matter.
it's and this is our Western
Yeah.
minds. Our Western minds want to put things into neat little boxes,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it should be seconds.
Yes.
Because a second is a quantifiable, measurable
Yeah.
unit of time.
Yes.
That's a very logical idea.
Yes.
Whereas what this is saying is, no, do it as per your capacity.
Yeah.
Take it one step at a time as your capacity.
Yeah, and I think this helps with the whole idea of like releasing into spontaneous breath retention, is because it doesn't even matter how
Exactly.
long you're holding it for.
It'll build up over
it'll
time.
build up over time.
And then at one point you'll realize I didn't even
Breathe.
intend to hold. But I don't need to breathe, so I'm okay. And there's a bliss in that. There's a very blissful feeling that comes with that. All right.
What's next?
Final little thing I wanted to talk about in Ayurveda.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the breath retentions and how that works in with the doshas.
Yeah, I think this is really helpful stuff. When I was looking over the notes before, I was like, yeah, this is just like really interesting stuff. I love to talk about the doshas and specifically the breath retention. You know, when we're working with pranayama, like we've kind of mentioned, and I'm sure we've done many episodes on pranayama, but we're expanding our capacity for prana. So it's intrinsically linked to so many things that we're looking at Ayurveda. Where it's linked to our capacity for love, our capacity for connection. It's related to our capacity for digestion, our Agni, but also our sensory mind, all of this processing. So pranayama is so important from the Ayurvedic perspective. But we can break it down into the 3 doshas. So basically, if somebody is like a Vata predominant individual, it means that sometimes these retentions might be like a little bit destabilizing. And Vata predominant types usually have a little bit more fear present. They don't have less of this container that we're talking about, right? Like the pot is less stable because their Vata predominants are often quite like frail or lean, and they don't really have that like juicy container for the breath, for prana. So when we're working with the retentions, it can just be a little bit destabilizing if practiced with too much aggression or too much force. And so I often like in this case to work on intuitive retentions. Like just start by noticing the pauses in between the inhale and the exhale, and linger there. You know, like it doesn't have to be a count, it doesn't have to be anything. It's just like notice and feel into that space, and then when you feel the urge to breathe again, go for it that way. That it's like quite a gentle approach. Pitta predominance, obviously quite a competitive bunch. So the breath retentions are probably something that they would time and compete in that way. But actually, for Pitta predominant types, it would be more beneficial to focus on the exhalations and the exhale retention, which is that cooling, that soothing, that calming aspect of the breath. Whereas the Kapha individuals, more so on the inhale retentions. So that expansion, that capacity to get bigger, to breathe, to draw more prana in. Kapha types are often quite like stuck and heavy and lethargic, those, you know, feelings weighing down, and there's often so much Kapha in the chest that if we focus on the inhale retentions, it will naturally start to pacify Kapha. So Vata is just a little bit intuitive, a little bit gentle explorations with the breath retentions until you feel like you have that stable container for it. Consistent practice helps over time, even just of asana. Pitta predominance, focusing on the exhalation retentions and soothing and cooling the mind in that way. And then Kapha types on that invigorating, enlivening inhale retentions.
Full power.
Full power.
Love it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think this is just such an interesting piece because it really does tell us just that everyone is so different.
Yeah.
And everyone needs to approach this in their own unique and individual
100%.
ways. Very cool.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about how we've got the pranayama section in the app.
Oh, yeah.
And it took me actually quite a little bit of time. I was spending a few hours at my computer in the middle of the night, and I created for us a pranayama timer, and it was for that reason, for the people who get stressed out by counting.
Yeah.
They're like, 4 to 8 to 8 to 4.
Yeah.
Oh, it's too much for me to think about all the counting. So I built one that has little tones. You can slide to the number of counts that you want.
Yeah.
And then there's a little graphic that kind of pings
It's very
it, the
relaxing.
inhale and the exhale.
Yeah.
Have you tried it with the sounds yet?
No, not with the sounds.
I added sounds to it on the plane to India.
Wow, okay.
And so it can take that stress out of it. And it's for free if you download the OmSom app.
Yeah, right. So you don't have to count. It just like tells you when to.
And you don't even have to look at your phone. You can just like have the sound on, keep it next to your mat, and then it will kind of help you to be a little deeper into your practice.
Reminds me of Simon, who you're going to have on the podcast really soon. Or maybe it's just gone from last week. How is it going to work in the universe of time? I think maybe
it was last week.
Yeah, and how Simon teaches is with a lot of sounds, and that like instead of cueing, he like clicks, and that's when you know it changes. It just takes that thinking process out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
I like that.
For sure. So yeah, it's something that could be really helpful.
Yeah, so if you haven't downloaded the app, it's just OmSom in the App Store on Android and iPhone. You'll find heaps of stuff on there, including all of our online offerings. But that part of the app is completely free, which is the breath retention, the breath pranayama section. And there's also the Asana quiz in there if you want to have a little bit of a fun game without downloading a real game.
100%. And it just gives you that opportunity to then build up your ratios over time. There's a custom section in there. Yeah. And you can start with whatever you're comfortable with. And then after a week or two, then add an extra count.
Cool.
Add an extra count. Add an extra count. And you can kind of see your progress in that way.
I like that.
So yeah, I'm always updating it, trying to make it a little bit more interactive every time. So check it out.
Vibes.
Now, I think the most important thing is just to always be careful when you're doing these practices. Don't do them while you're driving, obviously. Yeah. Do them whilst you're doing your yoga practice. But really, if you're someone who practices a lot of asanas, give yourself the opportunity to go and explore these different parts of yoga, because there is so much to learn and there's so much nourishment that we can take from these different, more stillness-based practices. So
absolutely. And also, like, it's so easy to start to explore this in asana too.
Yeah.
That exploring just different breath ratios and breath retentions. Like, if there's that,
not in headstands though.
No, but in other movements, it's okay to explore. And I think that potentially, like, if there is this fear around breath retentions, whilst doing it in an asana might be a little bit of a bridge, because there's something else for the mind to focus on at the same time as the breath retention. That could be a nice bridge.
Just not in headstand.
Okay, no headstand.
No inversions and breath retentions.
Okay, fair enough.
Just be upright.
I don't think anyone was planning on that, but good disclaimer.
All right, I think we're going to wrap it up here. What do you think?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Please check out the website. We've got a whole bunch going on this year. We have Indu coming to Melbourne in May. I think that's this month.
It's May now. Yeah.
We have Sri Lanka happening next month, which is in July. Yes. And then we have a retreat, maybe. We have a 300-hour, maybe September.
Yes, good
We've
work.
Got all sorts of things happening. So
everything that you need will be on the website. Just go and have a look. You'll find everything at all. But we would absolutely love to have you join us for some kind of offering, whether it's in person, whether it's online. Your support means the world to us.
All right. Hadi Om.
Hadi Om.